Greetings, welcome back to the channel. I'm Ken McCall for Jazz Vinyl Audiophile. Today I wanted to talk about two distinct topics: how I collect jazz vinyl records and why I collect jazz vinyl records. I am a failed jazz musician. I played drums for about 20 years. Came to New York, just couldn't hack it. Studied at school, took a bunch of private lessons, learned the vernacular and the vocabulary of the gigging jazz drummer playing standards. I played in some big bands, I played on some club dates. But long before that, the reason I love jazz and collect jazz vinyl records, I believe the jazz musician is the ultimate expression of creativity ever found in the United States of America, coming out of Congo Square, starting with Dixieland and then the Territory bands, and then Scott Joplin and Earl Hines and Fats Waller and Art Tatum, the great masters, on to the other great masters, up to the swing era, Count Basie, Duke Ellington, Benny Goodman, into the hard bop era, with all the greats we all know and love. People really love hard bop these days. But jazz is the ultimate American art form for me, which most Americans don't give a rat's ass about. But it's a great music. It's the ultimate expression, not only of musicians who have honed their craft, who spent years out of their lives perfecting their craft, from Hank Mobley to Duke Ellington to Billy Strayhorn to Lenny Tristano to Shelly Manne to Paul Chambers to Dave Holland. So many great musicians. All the people who worked with Miles Davis. Miles Davis, one of the most important figures in American jazz, along with John Coltrane and Duke Ellington and Count Basie. But to me, there's just no higher form of expression. We all love hard bop. We love Lee Morgan and Jack McLean and Hank Mobley and Sonny Clark, because these guys they created such incredibly beautiful music, often in deleterious, extremely hard, racist situations, yet they created art. I don't believe they were thinking of racism and things when they performed in the studio. As a musician, your goal is to make a perfect track. You have to cut the track, cut the ensembles, cut your solos, play a supporting role. I believe when they were composing many of those records, as you can see in their titles, from Max Roach to Jackie McLean, they were definitely thinking of the racism of the 60s and the racism of today, which has never stopped. But it gives me the most pleasure listening to jazz. Identify with it. The swing rhythm is universal. The swing rhythm was evident in America from the era of Dixieland right up to the 70s, was in popular culture. Ding, 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 walking bass lines. Not so much these days. Even though I do believe there's a lot of great jazz being made today. That's why I'm trying to review more CDs on my channel, jazz CDs. And moving forward, that I will be reviewing. I reviewed the Joe Henderson Complete Blue Note sessions on Mosaic for Stereophile. It's out this month. I'm going to review it here on the channel as well. And look for upcoming reviews of the reissue analog productions of the John Coltrane Quartet Crescent against the original, which I have, and the recent classic vinyl series of Jackie McLean Destination Out against the original that I have. I'm also going to be reviewing, for Stereophile in here, a new Gearbox 45-inch collection. And they're trying to take a page from ERC, I guess. Gearbox, who is a high-end audio label, they use a wonderful playback system, including audio note gear. And this is the Valve Mastered series. No, the Valve Mastered 7s. All analog direct-to-disc vacuum tube recordings using a Scully lathe, Westrex series amps, Westrex cutting head, Telefunken tube limiter, Decca valve equalization monitored on audio note equipment. This should sound fantastic. I haven't listened to it yet. But, so that's why I collect jazz. It spoke to me from a really early age. Even though my parents listened to big band music and swing music, but that was before I was born. I grew up hearing the Beatles and the Stones, but something always spoke to me that I should be collecting jazz. None of my friends knew what it was, but I visited New York in 1978 for the first time. I've told the story of being here, and my sister said Miles lives down the block. I went down and took a picture of Miles. He was out front. And I went home and started listening to Miles Davis records, and that was like the beginning of that for me. The first Miles record I bought was Basic Miles, then I bought Nefertiti. I remember being in the backyard grilling chicken, listening to Nefertiti, drinking too much wine. It was just, wow, this is a surreal experience. So jazz means a lot to me personally. It's a major part of my life. I've interviewed many, 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 many jazz musicians. known and unknown. And I'm lucky enough to write about hi-fi gear for Stereophile. That's why I review, why I collect jazz records. How I collect jazz records. You know, when I began collecting, there was only one reissue label, Mosaic. That was it. They're the first ones that I know that you would call audiophile grade reissues. Then around the time of the resurgence, I'm not sure the exact dates, Paul Wells would know, Music Matters began pressing beautiful sleeves and vinyl from the original master tapes. They sort of set the standard. And then Blue Note realized, as the record resurgence grew, they took it back on themselves, and they've done an incredible job, first with the 75th Anniversary series, then the Classic 80s series, now Tone Poet and the Classic Vinyl series. Fantastic pressings. They can't keep up with the demand. Of course, we also had Chad Kasem over at Analog Productions. We have ERC. We have Pure Pleasure. We have Speaker's Corner. Then there's the whole gray market EU thing cut from digital, which if you just need to hear the record, you know, the argument actually for just hearing the record from the EU labels is getting really, really thin, because the prices on the domestic reissues are really, really good. And then you have the other tier of Craft One Batch and ERCs, obviously, which I agree, ERC, those pressings should be perfect out of the gate, but nobody's doing what they're doing. No one's going to that kind of trouble to replicate an exact all-tube period reproduction channel. Nobody else is doing that but ERC. Saying that, I haven't heard an ERC, I don't know. I have heard a Craft One Batch. I had a Lush Life. I compared it against mine. I preferred the mine. In general, I prefer the older pressings. That's another story. But there is a history of crate digging, obviously, and collecting vinyl that goes back to the 50s. And we're in the era when all you have to do is sit in front of your computer and find out the new Tone Poet pressings that are coming up, and you can order them and wait till they show up. And then you have people that get upset if their stouting cover isn't perfect, if there's some weird shading on the record. We also have people who grew up with CDs who think all vinyl should sound like a CD. I understand you can't get a lot of these, you know, famous prestige Blue Note, RCA Victor, Verve records in little small towns across America, but in my experience, there is a used record store in every medium-sized city in America. My point being that there's more to collecting jazz vinyl than just ordering all the stuff online, which by the looks of some YouTube channels, that's all they do. And more power to them if they can afford to do that. I certainly can't afford to order every new jazz vinyl reissue that comes out, nor would I want to. I did a video with Dan the Jazz Shepherd where he asked me what Tone Poets I'm looking forward to having coming out, and I just told him none of them really, and I got attacked for that. That's not slagging on them. I have a lot of Blue Note pressings that I've been collecting for a long time. There's no particular Tone Poet title that I really want to hear, just because I have most of that stuff. And I'm very happy with the older pressings. You know, when you go to a record store and you meet the owner, you're always going to find records that you've never seen anywhere else. You're always going to find records that have never been reissued. You're always going to find records that when they came out, because they're jazz artists, were released in very small batches. And those can be amazing records. And it can also lead to finding other weird records that are non-jazz records. A great store in Allentown, Pennsylvania, Double Decker Records. I love that place. And that's another thing you can do at a record store you can't do online. You can trade in your old records. It's a culture. It's a community. It's a giving and taking, and to and fro, and camaraderie, and call and response. The owner of the store gets to know you. He gets to know what you like. He'll hold records for you. I bet this guy would like this when it comes in the store. I used to know a guy at Academy Records who would hold all the classical percussion records for me, because I was a percussionist and I love classical percussion records. I have many copies of the same records because of that. The Perez records, or there's an amazing Stockhausen piece. I forgot the name of it. I only have 2 versions of it, and it's just a wild percussion piece with snare drums and timpani. And I have a great all-Japanese toccata for percussion by somebody, Araga. You know, when you go to a record store, you'll go down all these other rabbit holes that you won't go if you're just ordering stuff online. So that's the point of this little video, is there's more to collecting jazz vinyl than just buying it all online. And I I made a first version of this video but didn't record. So I pulled out some records that I found in record stores that I would never have seen anywhere else. And I've never seen them again. And this was just getting on my hands and knees and going to record stores. A couple of years ago I did a tour of the Hudson Valley, and I went to every record store. I was amazed at all the record stores in every town. Beacon, there's 2 in Beacon, Poughkeepsie, Catskill, Troy, they all have record stores. And some people think the great majority of jazz records are centered in New York and New Jersey. That's probably true, but not 100% true. So anyway, I found all these records. This is a keyboard collection on Savoy. Miriam McPartland, Lenny Tristano, Bobby Scott, Joe Bushkin. Beautiful laminated cover, 25 bucks. Actually, I lost this record. I can find, but it's got this cool kind of expect an astonishing stereophonic dimension from Sonic Workshop, motion and percussion, the Hollywood Pops. Now a lot of this gets into ping pong kind of nonsense. All Night Long. I'm not sure where I found this. On Fantana. This is a soundtrack to an amazing record with Patrick McGee, the prisoner or the secret agent, where he plays a I think he wants to play a wannabe musician. And the movie is based on King Lear or something, but in the movie you have Charles Mingus, Dave Brubeck, Tubby Hayes, Johnny Scott, Keith Christie, Albert Courtley, Kenny Napper, a lot of British musicians. This record has never been reissued in any way, shape, or form that I'm aware of. Full stereo. An Illinois Jacquette record. We have quite a few of these Verve records at the store. There's Illinois Jacquette, just an amazing, spirited tenor player drawing from the swing era. These records are so fantastic, and he had so much gusto and personality. I also think about Lucky Thompson, a slightly later period, I think, than Illinois Jacquette, just had a creamy sound and a great flowing improvisational style. You don't see this every day. This is on MPS, the German label from the Black Forest. This piano player, Jankowski Skyline, Horst Jankowski. I don't know what to call this music. It's sort of easy listening. It's sort of midnight music. It's sort of choral jazz. I've never seen this again. Spectra Sound, sort of a, I got this at Brooklyn Record Exchange. Kind of a hi-fi record. Bruton Music. I found this out in a record shop in Queens. Bruton was a library label. Library music out of the UK. Music for backgrounds, for commercials, for travel logs, for movies, all kind of stuff. And I was told that the DJ Steinsky brought this collection, I have a few of these, into the store. And sometimes you find some amazingly atmospheric stuff on these things. They're not all uniformly great. Another Savoy pressing, No Count. I actually got this at Jazz Record Center. But there are so many records you're going to find at a record store that came out of some old person's house, or somebody died, or came out of an estate sale, that you're never going to see reissued. All I'm saying is there's more to collecting vinyl and the enjoyment of collecting vinyl and the pursuit and building a collection than just buying all this new stuff online. Every medium-sized city has a record store. Or, you know, take a day trip. Go see some sights. One of these days I'm going to drive 5 hours north and go to this amazing store I've heard about, Bop Shop in Rochester. And I bet that'll blow my mind. Every store you go to will have stuff you've never seen anywhere else. And as I said, you can take records into a record store. You can get on there, you can give them your want list. And most people who work at record stores are extremely knowledgeable, because they sure ain't working there for the money, I tell you that. Anyway, just speaking my piece. Thanks a lot.